So how do you create a brand that truly represents who you are and the products you sell, as well as building a business that you can scale online? That is what this podcast will help you do. My name is Henry Kaminski Jr., and welcome to the Brand Doctor Podcast.
Let me just make this statement loud and clear. Jersey's here, Jersey's here.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Brand Doctor Podcast episode. Today, guys, we're going to be talking about leveling up your influence on social media. And we're not talking about those silly influencers you see out there every day posing in front of silly cars and houses that they don't own. That shit goes right through me. So I really want to have a serious conversation today about influence and how to leverage your influence and position your influence and intentionally use your influence to help people. Bottom line. So I got my man Oase in the house once again. What is shaking, dude?
What's up, Henry? What's up, everybody? How's your weekend, man?
Dude, it was Father's Day yesterday.
Yeah.
And man, I gotta tell you, my little guy got me. He got me good, man. Right in the heart.
I saw that.
He was so excited to give me his gift. And all week, so my son has a tendency to like blow surprises. Like he can't keep a secret. So he was so proud of himself that he kept this secret and he kept the gifts all hidden. And I come downstairs and you can see he's all pumped. And I see this card that he made me, and I just freaking lost it. And it's big. It's like 8.5, 11 sheet of paper, and it says, "These hands," and he took handprints. "These hands hold my daddy's heart," and it says "Happy Father's Day" on the front.
Wow. And
then on the inside, I didn't get a chance to show this on social, but I can't get the damn thing looking. But on one side it says, "I love you because," and then on the other page it says, "You are my hero, Daddy. Love, Dante." And apparently I grew some hair, so he's got a stick figure. He's got a stick figure of me, and his handprint is the cape behind the stick figure, and there's an S on the cape for Superman.
Wow.
And
that's some good imagination there, man.
Tell me about it. But he had me balling, and then he got me, he made me this little coffee cup. He goes, "You could put this," because I drink espresso every morning. He's like, "Now you can put your espresso in a bigger cup." And on one side it says, "The best dad ever." And the other side, he drew another stick figure of me. And it says, "I love you this much." So this was huge, and I was pumped. So the weekend was good. My father came in from Pennsylvania, and we had a great barbecue in the backyard. We just got the deck repainted, the patio's all sharp. My wife decorated really nice. So it was a great weekend. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about leveling up your influence on social media. So before we dive into how to just do that, you and I were talking offline about some potential issues, right? Some potential issues. Oh, we got my cousin in the house. Real quick, before we get started here, Kellyanne is in the house. That's one of my cousins. And then we also have Orange County Websites in the house. He's getting his hair cut. He said he can't talk, but he's listening in. So big shout out to you. Okay, so big issue when it comes to your influence on social media. And what exactly is an influencer? Right? I think we got this term influencer mixed up with hype, with a large follower count. So I want to get to the bottom of what an influencer actually is. Before I share this more formal definition that I found, what is an influencer to you, always?
Well, I mean, standing in front of Lamborghinis to me sounds like a good influencer. Especially the ones that are rented. I mean,
I can feel the sarcasm. I can feel the sarcasm.
I had to go into it with that, man.
Of course.
But no, seriously, an influencer to me is not necessarily just someone that is out there selling something that is core to their business, but really getting their ideas out there.
Mm.
They're an influencer that gets others to buy in to not just a product or an offering, but they get them to buy into a specific movement. They get them to buy into a specific idea.
Mm.
And that idea now cultivates into a much larger following.
I like that. So there is a definition that I found online, and I'm sharing it here, and I'll read it to you for those folks that are going to be listening on the podcast. But what is an influencer? An influencer is someone who has the power to affect the purchasing decisions of others because of his or her authority, knowledge, position, or relationship with his or her audience, and/or a following in a distinct niche with whom he or she actively engages. The size of the following depends on the size of his or her topic of the niche. And then it says it's important to note that these individuals are not merely marketing tools, but rather social relationship assets with which brands can collaborate to achieve their marketing objectives. Then I also see here influencers in social media are people who have built a reputation for their knowledge and expertise. I think let me say that again. Are people who have built a reputation for their knowledge and expertise on a specific topic, and they make regular posts about that topic on their preferred social channels and generate large followings of enthusiastic, engaged people who pay close attention to their views. Brands love social media influencers because they can create trends and encourage their followers to buy products they promote. So, I gotta tell you, that's a pretty solid definition.
Yeah. It hits all the different points.
Right? So, let me get rid of this to free up some more bandwidth. And then let's talk about some of the issues here that I think we need to address to help you guys level up your influence on social media. So the other thing we talked about offline was people not being quite sure why they want to be an influencer in the first place. And I know you felt very, very strong about this. So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, look, when they're not sure about whether they want to become an influencer or not, they need to figure out what's the objective, and that's every single thing you do. What is that end goal? Is it to generate more business? Is it just for a following? Is it just so you can feed your own ego? Define the purpose. What is it, right? Yeah. And move from that aspect, and you'll have a much better strategy. You'll know exactly what things to implement in order for you to get there, and have a solid grounding for it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this leads us to our next point, where the people that are struggling out there are the ones that are afraid to really take a stand on what it is that they believe in. And that's a big problem, in my opinion, because it feels like you're going in half pregnant, you're going in with one foot in, one foot out. And how can you be of true influence if you're not all in on a specific thought or feeling? I don't know. That's a question for the audience, really. You know, because I think the people that are your audience can see right through that bullshit, and I think by you not taking a full stand on something, your audience is saying to themselves unconsciously, I don't know if I trust this person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I don't know. That's my opinion. I would love to get some of the audience participation that are live here with us today in on that question.
You're right, man. I mean, what you think and how you behave and how you show up, what you're speaking needs to be congruent. And that taking a stance, it's not taking a stance on just random stuff, but you truly have to believe and have, show up with conviction in what you believe and what you do and how you're saying it.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to essentially create that following.
And that's how we tie that back to brand too. That's how we tie that back to brand, because when you are 1,000% in, right, and you're consistent with that, then people are really going to understand who you are, what you stand for, what you love and what you hate. And I know hate's a strong word, but right, but at least it's the line is drawn in the sand, and they know what side of that line they want to be on. So,
what are your boundaries? What are you going to tolerate? What are you not going to tolerate?
Yeah. And I think another issue that a lot of people have is that they're too general, and they lack the focus that they really want to dial into. So when you're too general, people are like, well, where do you stand on this? Or what exactly are we talking about today? One of my other branding colleagues mentioned this on a conversation last week. He said, if I'm showing up every day on your social media feed, you're talking about something different. Like, then what? How do I know what you're good at? How do I know, how I can't remember you for something. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does.
And I thought that was powerful. Just the way he said it.
Yeah.
So being consistent and extremely focused is a great target to hit.
It always comes down to those content pillars. Always comes down to those 5 core things that you want to talk about, and just consistently come back and hit on those topics over and over again. Rinse and repeat.
We've been doing this too long together.
I know, man.
I love it. How about this one? And again, guys, we're going over some issues here first, and then we're going to dive into some of the solutions in a couple of minutes. But the other thing I have written down here is afraid to showcase their vulnerabilities. Afraid to showcase their vulnerabilities because of the fear of being judged. I think that's what it comes down to.
This is a tough one, man. This is a really tough one.
Yeah, this one doesn't come easy to some.
Yeah.
But you'll see, see in a few minutes how we could flip this sucker on its head.
Yeah.
And have it working for you, I should say, stronger than you could ever think. So, here's another one you have here written down. I want you to share this one with the audience.
Not challenging assumptions. And it's not necessarily just challenging the assumptions of your core audience. Going out there and again, and that kind of ties into your beliefs, the way that you're showing up in your conviction, truly believing in what you stand for, will inform you with that confidence to challenge the general assumptions that perhaps are commonly held by your audience or by your target clients or whoever it is that you're wanting to influence.
Yeah, I'll give you a real life experience of this. I want to give a quick little shout out though to April Tobin. She's checking in live with us. So what's going on, April? Hope you enjoy the show today. So real life situation on this, right? So I'm talking to my team this morning. Every Monday morning, like clockwork, we have our team meeting. And I was telling the team that I had somewhat interviewed a potential consultant to help us with Instagram growth. And I said, the consultant asked me what I wanted to do. Did I want to grow my following or did I want to monetize the following? And it was very it was very oriented, like either this or that. And one of my team members said, Henry, why not both? Why not both? And I was like, I assumed you could only do one at a time.
Yeah.
Based on priority and based on, different tactics and things. And he said, but you have a team. We can handle this. Why not both? And I was like, well, that's why you are on my team, my friend. So he was challenging my assumption, which I love. And I think that's the part of having a great team around you is they're not going to sit there and take what's presented to them. They will challenge it. They're not going to take it at face value. They're going to go deeper.
And that's what separates an amateur from an expert. An expert, when you hire an expert, they will come in and challenge your assumptions. They will come in and hold you accountable as much as you hold them accountable, right?
Don't you love those types of people on your team? I know people that hate these folks because they're constantly being challenged and they hate to be challenged because they fear that is they're intimidated by that, in my opinion. Yeah.
That's an infringement of their authority or what they feel is their authority, right?
I encourage it and I welcome it because if you're not pulling me out of my comfort zone, then I'm not growing.
Yeah.
I'm not growing. Yeah. And when you're not growing, there's different ways you look at this, but if you're not growing, you're stagnating in my opinion. You're dying. Yeah. So not challenging assumption. So we're sharing all of this with you because these are some of the issues that hold back your influence on social media or hold you back from really tapping into the true influence that you have. Because I'm a firm believer that everybody has the ability to influence people. It's whether or not they pull that influence out and actually use it. So, April says here, it's their ego getting in the way. And it's very true. We have two more, and then we're going to get into solutions. So the next one that we want to talk about is not being relatable to your audience online. And I feel like there's sometimes where people become so successful that they're out of touch with their ideal clients. And that one kind of creeps up on you. That one isn't so obvious. You can start to get to a level in your career where you start to live in a bubble. I mean, I see it all the time. These mega influencers out there, they lose touch. And that's tough. I think you're doing your audience a disservice when you get to that level. So how do you? Well, I don't want to get into problem solving yet. So how do we address that? So we got some answers later. And then lastly here, I have you don't have a pulse on their pain.
That's a good one.
That may be a cousin to what I just mentioned of not being relatable, but you don't have a pulse on their pain. If you don't know what your audience is truly struggling with, how can you influence them? How can you create change in their life? Something to think about, guys.
So what does this all boil down to? All of these problems that we've listed, what happens? You're just out there without any clarity, without any direction, without any focus.
Mm-hmm. So
are you really getting any results?
Yeah, what are you doing it for? Like, let's
all that time, all that investment of time, all that investment of money, all that investment of just, doing all this without a lack of direction, with a blindfold on.
Yeah. It's easy it's easy to crank up a follower count. It's easy to get out there and put out a bunch of content. Like, that's the easy part.
That's the easy part, yeah.
But how do you get that content to actually work for you?
Yeah.
That's the ticket. That's the real question here. So after we come back from this quick little short message, we're going to get into how to actually leverage your influence and create massive influence on your social media channels.
If you're a business owner who feels your branding isn't truly representing the value that you deliver, check out this free video training that will help you level up your brand's messaging and online presence so that you can start attracting higher quality clients. Visit www.uniquedesignz with a Z at the end, not an S, .net/level up my branding.
All right, so let's rock and roll, okay? So the first thing that I want to encourage you to do is, if you want to be heard on social media, then make a statement already. Like, my mother used to say this all the time, like, shit or get off the pot. Like, if you have something to say that is going to challenge someone's assumption or push them and give them the encouragement that they need, then make the statement already. Right? What are you waiting for?
Yeah. And what do you strongly believe in? Maybe that's what you start off with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, you're entitled to your belief. It's up to you to stand behind it.
Yeah.
And to live it.
That's a big, that's big.
And I wouldn't be apologetic about it. Listen, This is your life. You can live it the way you want. Period. End of story. So if you want to be heard, then make a statement. And I'm not saying do these theatrical, ridiculous things on social media. That's just going to get you that shallow attention, right? You see these people online doing these stupid videos. Like, that's not what I'm talking about here. Like, anybody could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know deep into your core what you stand for. So get out there and say it. Like, I won't tolerate mediocre anymore. I won't tolerate talk shitting anymore. Or I should say shit talking, whatever you want to talk, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
Like,
or inauthenticity.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't have time for that. And in my opinion, that's negative energy. And I will run for the hills when that shit starts to creep around.
Yeah.
Or I cut it like a cancer. Because I don't have time for it. I don't. Life is way too short to surround yourself with toxic people.
Exactly.
So, next one, and this one may come obvious to some, but knowing your audience. Who are you talking to? Have you defined that yet? Who is your people? I have a great comedian that I follow, Sebastian Maniscalco, and he was talking about how he was shooting this video with Ray Romano in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, there is they call it like not yuppies, what the hell, hipsters, very hipster. There's a lot of hipsters in Williamsburg, right? And that's not his. He was telling the story about how he was roaming around in Williamsburg and he realized like the people that were living in Williamsburg, and he was like, yeah, these people that live in Williamsburg, they're not my people. They're not the people that go to his shows, and he knows that. And he wasn't making fun of him or anything. He was just saying like, I don't fit in here.
Yeah.
But he knows who his people are.
Yeah.
He knows who his people are. So that's going to come out in your voice. That's going to come out in your content. That's going to come out in everything that you do on social media. So knowing who your audience is very, very important. Right? Who's your audience, Oasis? Like, if I were to ask you that question, could you clearly define that?
Yeah, absolutely. Business owners that have been in business for at least 5 to 10 years. Okay. And they're generating anywhere from 5 million to about 20 million in revenue.
Okay.
And more importantly, they're growth oriented. They want to hire an expert, and they want to be able to get out of their way. Mm-hmm. Because these guys are too busy. They don't want to wear multiple hats. They believe in the growth of their business by hiring the right people for the right job.
Yeah, so you're not out on social media creating videos on how to create logos.
No.
Because your audience don't give a shit about that.
Yeah. They want us to do that.
Yeah. So just do it for me. So that's the example that I want to spotlight here for a second, because I actually saw one of my clients ask the question today. Do you want me to show you how to create cinematic videos? Well, if I'm another video guy, yeah, I want you to teach me all the tricks so I can show you up one day. But if I am a potential client that wants to hire you, I don't need to get in the weeds about how you do it. I just want you, I want to see the end result and see if it's quality. And if it is, I'm hiring you. Especially if I like your attitude. Period. So I wrote him back because he did a little poll in his IG story, and I wrote, no, it's boring. And I texted him and I messaged him and I said, no, because I'm just hiring you to do this for me. I don't give a shit how you create it.
Exactly.
So knowing your audience, I won't beat a dead horse, but I gave you some good examples there. Oasis and I gave you some good examples there. So how about this next one? Your greatest weakness can be your greatest strength. Your greatest weakness can be your greatest strength. So it took me a long time. I won't get into how many years, but close to 3/4 of my lifetime to understand this and to talk about it publicly. That I grew up an insecure kid. I grew up somebody that didn't have a lot of self-confidence. And I shared how that affected my relationships, affected my business relationships, affected my business for the worse, not the better. But had I not gone through that, I would not be here talking about it today. And how I was able to overcome that. It was not easy. There was a lot of therapy. There was a lot of breakups, personally and professionally. Relationships that were great, that went sour, and will never be the same because of decisions I've made. And I don't blame those people. I blame myself. I'm responsible for my actions. But that was a big weakness of mine. I had to do it my way. I had to do it to prove something. And again, you heard me say this, I was doing the right things for the wrong reasons. And that was a big weakness of mine. And a lot of people saw right through that shit, and they were like, "Hey, we know you. Like, you don't got to do this for show. Like, if you're gonna do it for you. We'll appreciate that. We'll respect that more than you trying to show off. Then let's just call it what it is. So important stuff there, you know. People want to cover that up. People want to bury that stuff because again, they're afraid to be exposed. They're afraid to be judged, and they fear that people won't respect them.
But that's what goes back to one of the points that you stated in the problems area, which was relatability. Creating relatable content also means that you sometimes share your failures. Have the courage to stand up and share some of your failures. And I think that might be a start. At least for me, it was to share some of the challenges that I encountered and that I endured throughout my entrepreneurial journey, especially very early on. That lack of confidence, and you know, having those same parallels as you, Henry, where you know you felt like when you said that I want to do it myself, you know, and sometimes like when you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. Well, that's only going to take you so far. And that's not a growth mindset. Exactly. It is. Yeah. It's a spiral.
Yeah. It's a trap.
It's downward spiral, and very destructive. So, you know, if you want to get out of that, and first of all, you need to have the mindset to get out of that. But I think the first step is to be accountable to yourself.
Yeah. 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 And understand that everybody has weaknesses.
Yeah.
And the real brave ones are the ones that share them openly. You know, here's the way I look at it. If I just let it out, what do you got on me? Nothing.
I love when the jersey comes out, man. What do you got on me?
I'm just because I remember this clear as day when I made the switch. Like if I just come out and give you all of my weaknesses, if you try to play those against me, then now I see your true colors. So
yeah,
I know who you really are now. And who really loses at the end of the day? Not me.
Yeah.
So that's my mentality about weakness is, listen, if I'm going to war, I'm not going to hand over a blueprint on how I'm going to destroy you. That's not what I mean. You know, like that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about like real weaknesses that, you know, people have a weakness around sobriety. Right? And I have a ton of respect for people that come out and say, you know, I'm an addict and I'm recovering. I've been 20 years clean, 10 years clean, 6 weeks clean. Like I have a tremendous amount of respect for those people that come out and share that. And that's the majority. I truly feel deep in my heart of heart, like the majority of the world respect that.
Yeah.
And the folks that don't, you're always going to have an asshole somewhere. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's always going to be one. So don't be that guy.
And those are the stories that really show you that overcoming adversity and they're not afraid to talk about it. And it really enables people to connect with them in a meaningful way. Their audience might not be addicts. Maybe some of them are, or some of them are recovering. But we all have some sort of an addiction. It could be an addiction to the pursuit of perfection that's constantly killing you. Yeah. It's not just killing your progress, but it's a burden on you psychologically. It's a burden on your relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So your greatest strengths, your greatest weaknesses can turn out to be your greatest strengths if you deliberately leverage them. Okay. Here's another one. Never be afraid to get fired. Never be afraid to get fired. And I was sharing with you always how I was watching this documentary around Serena Williams, and it was about coaching. And one of Serena Williams, like one of the best tennis players on the planet, was testing her coach. And he would show up, and she wouldn't acknowledge him. She wouldn't listen to what he was saying. She wouldn't give him the respect. And she was paying him top dollar. And he saw what was going on. She was showing up to practice late, really giving him the FU. And he said one day she pulled the shit, and I pull her aside, and he said, let's get something straight here. If I'm going to be your coach, there's going to be a couple of things that go on. One is when I come into the room, you're going to acknowledge me. And he wasn't talking down to her. He's just like, you're going to listen to me, and you're going to acknowledge me. And you're going to listen to my rules, because there's rules. Right? And he was like, here's rule 1, here's rule 2. And he's like, you got it? And she said, well, what's rule 3? To kind of let go of the tension that's in the air. But she got it. She got it. Because he said, they interviewed the coach, and the coach was like, if I were to let her walk on me and walk all over me, I wouldn't get the respect.
Yeah.
And she would steamroll me every time.
Yeah.
Raise your hand virtually if you ever brought on a client and they tried to bully you, or to test your patience, or to test your position, and you cracked, and you let them dominate and take over the whole project when you knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Hold the ground.
I'm not pointing fingers. I've done it numerous times in my 14-year career. But now when that presents itself, I nip it right in the ass. Yeah. Right away. And I have to. I have questions. I have questions that do it tastefully. Right? I love April here. You don't demand respect, you command respect.
Demand respect.
That's great. Yeah, that is great. I love that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, April. So, never be afraid to get fired. Because you said, to your point, you said this live or off camera or off mic, but that's why they're hiring you in the first place.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, you're the expert.
Lead.
Yeah. And look, do you go to the doctor, and once the doctor prescribes you a course of therapy, obviously if you're a non-compliant patient in that regard, then of course, you're just going about your ways. But
yeah.
Do you constantly question your doctor's therapy, and how effective is that going to be if you're constantly questioning it? So why would you do the same thing when it comes to hiring an expert? So if you're the expert, and I said this in one of the past live streams as well, if you are the expert, you are the therapy provider to your client. You are the care provider to your client. So in that regard, challenge their assumptions.
Yeah.
In that regard, challenge their assumptions, and that's what they hire you for. They don't want someone just coming in and being a yes man or a yes woman.
There's an elegance to this, right? There's an elegance to this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
asking the right questions.
Right. And I'm saying, don't be afraid to get fired. That means you can't be a dick to people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can't embarrass them, and you can't, do it in a distasteful way.
Yeah.
But there's an elegance to this. If somebody tries to dominate dominate a project or dominate you or bully you, a quick readjustment could be like, before we even move forward, here's a quick question.
Yeah. I mean, we can have an entire discussion on this, Henry. I mean, it starts with empathy. It starts with empathizing what you know, saying, I understand your frustration, or I help me understand where you're coming from with this. You know, clarify this for me a little bit.
Here's where I was going with it, though. I mean, a simple recalibrated question would be, why did you hire me in the first place? And right, and let them talk, and then they're probably going to say things out of frustration, maybe even anger. But now you're going to get to the root of this behavior, and now you're in a much better position to adjust it because you're more knowledgeable.
That's right.
So don't compete. Don't fight fire with fire. That's the worst. That's the worst thing you could do. Right. So again, never be afraid to get fired. Find the elegant way of setting boundaries and commanding respect, as April Tobin would say. Okay? We got 2 more, and then we're going to wrap this up. So last one. Well, second to last one. Let your audience know that they're not alone. How do you do that? And this is how you get into the vulnerabilities. You get into understanding them better than they know themselves by the content that you create. Where you're in their heads. So when they meet you for the first time, or they interact with you online, they're like, you're speaking my language. You get me. Thank you for this today. You know the DMs I'm talking about. I'm sure a few of you had a few of these come through. Well, why not create more of a consistency of that?
Yep.
So let them know that they're not alone. Let them know that you've gone through that struggle yourself, or you can relate somehow, some way. And then last but not least, ask questions. And I think this is where Awais wanted to pop. He popped that one in there. You know, Awais, tell them what you mean by ask questions.
I mean, a lot of your posts, and it's just going back to that creating relatability. A lot of, or you know, consider having just a single line of your topics around asking questions, getting people to really create their own story as a result of the questions that you've asked. And I'll give you an example. You know, this is a question, and the way that I lead into it is, what compelling question can you ask your clients today that will enable them, or that will trigger a specific action that you want? And that could be an action of, hey, let's move forward. Let's discuss next steps. Let's sign that paper. Yeah. So an example from my side would be, what problems or what challenges are you encountering currently in acquiring the right client?
Okay.
Right. And that at least gets them to build out their own story. And it can come back to them saying, look, I don't know. I have no clarity in terms of who I serve. I have no clarity in terms of how I'm positioned in the marketplace, how I'm different from my competitors. And that's impacting my business.
And then you continue the conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. If you don't have a structured way of identifying all of that, well, then again, it's now moving, and it's having a catastrophic impact in the amount of capital that you're losing in your marketing. And then that's having a catastrophic impact in the leads that are showing up in your sales funnel that aren't necessarily able to convert. All of it exhausting your capital.
Yeah.
So going back to the questions, having a list of questions that are related to some of the topics that you routinely discuss, but now turn that around in form of a question. So now you're actually creating that engagement with your audience. Yeah, now it's a two-way dialogue.
Right.
It's no longer just, I'm telling you what it is.
You want to make them feel that you're on their side of the desk.
Correct.
It's not you're on one side of the desk and they're on the other, right? And it's
exactly. You're not a counterpart. You're partners.
Correct. right? And you can establish that through your content. You can establish that through creating that influence online.
That's the first step to creating more of a dialogue before you actually, have a one-on-one with your prospective client.
Yes. So let's get into. I want to start to wrap this up. We're getting there. So I want you to start to think about something real quick. I'm going to toss this one out to you, and I want you guys to kind of reflect on this. I heard this line in one of these Netflix documentaries, and one of the lines was, "A good lie can become the truth." A good lie can become the truth. And I'll share with you kind of one of the things that helped me is I know that there's other people out there that are way better than me in what I do. But there is a daily affirmation that I rinse and repeat every single morning. And it is, I am one of the best at what I do. And that could be a really good lie I'm telling myself right now. I could suck. But when I tell myself that every day, and I go and do something that's out of character, or do something that isn't going to move the needle, I ask myself, is this going to align with that affirmation? And if the answer is no, I don't do it. So that lie potentially has turned into my truth. And I was telling Oasis before this recording, and I was telling him again, I was studying this coach that coach Serena Williams, and she wasn't making this one shot that's close to the net, and they knew that her opponent knew that was a huge weakness of hers. So they kept shooting short, and she would not run to the ball, and she kept losing those points. So the coach pulled her aside and he said, "You're going to win 80% of the points if you just meet the ball short." And she goes, "But I suck at the short ball." He goes, "I'm telling you right now, you're going to win 80% of those points if you meet the ball short." That's not a truth. She could still meet the ball short and screw up and lose the point. But what did she do? She started meeting the ball short, started winning those points. Completely dominated the short game after that. The short ball game after that. And he goes, I might have lied. I might have stretched the truth there and came up with some weird percentage of 80%. He goes, I pulled that out of my ass. I don't know if that's 80%. I don't know how true that is. But that's all Serena needed to meet that short ball.
He rewired her brain.
He rewired her. So April's giving us some love. I want to give her another shout out. She says,
"Thank you, April.
I love this. She goes, I'm great at what I do." Yeah. and just, I used to say that too. I used to say, I'm the best at what I do. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to humble myself a little bit here and not let my ego get that much of me. And I tweaked it to, I am one of the best at what I do. And that has just proven so good over the past few months that I've adjusted that affirmation, and it has pushed me through some of the slower moments in business and some of the darker times of business, and it has been so great to have that piece there that I just go back to every single day. How about this one? You like this one, Oasis? You want to finish the day before it starts. You want to finish the day before it starts. What do I mean by that? Go ahead, tell them.
No, so you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it was on a Clubhouse or if it was on IG Live, but you said that this is one of your daily practices. And so I took that. I was like, man, I'm going to do this same thing. And essentially what it was is that you already had your task list built out for the day. And you said that you tell yourself first thing in the morning that I've already completed this, 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 and this. And what the outcome of that is that you are able to actually complete all of those without it becoming now like a compiled list that moves into the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So, now it's no longer a pending list. It's something that's already been done.
Yeah.
And so I slowly started incorporating that into my routine and immediately saw some results. So good, man. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good practice to have. It's that mentally rewiring the brain that I've already completed this. And it could be one task at a time. It could be that you're working out and saying, I've already completed this rep. I have already completed this many reps, and moving on to the next exercise. But, again, focusing, having that deep set work on each task, but with the mindset that you have already completed it, moving into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy what that does. There's so many psychological triggers there that allow you to do things that you would never think imaginable that you'd be able to do. But so it's those little mind hacks, I guess you want to call
that little
them.
reticular activating system, man.
Yeah, like 80% of this game, guys, 90% of this game is mindset. When you can create a strong mindset, there is nothing that can stop you. Nothing. And this is tying this all back into a nice bow as we finish up here, is take one little aspect of what we said today and apply it if you want to create a stronger influence on social media. Just take one of the several things we said today and apply it and see what happens. See how your audience engages and interacts with you moving forward. It's going to change the game for you. It's really going to change the game for you. So, any parting words before we wrap up? I just got notified for those folks that are following. I'm taking my wife for her 40th birthday next year to Italy, and I'm taking my cousins and I'm taking our close friends. And I've always wanted to learn a second language, and I've dabbled with Spanish. I'm part Spanish from Spain, so I had aunts and uncles that used to babysit me as a kid, and I would hear them speaking Spanish all the time. And I always wanted to learn a second language, and I've been to Italy now 4 or 5 times. And when I come back, I'm always eager to learn the language. So when I go back again, I can interact and communicate with the natives, right? So I said to myself, right? I said, I am going to learn Italian before I go back to Italy next year. And so I have this app called Duolingo, and it's great. You could basically look up any language and it'll teach you. So I am steady where every day for the past week and a half, since we decided we were going to Italy, for the past week and a half, I've been going in. But the problem is, it's not a problem, it's actually a great thing. They've updated the app where now you can now compete with other people. And so there's this little crew of people that I'm in competition with. And I just got notified that this guy took my first place spot. And so now, tonight, I'm going to have to go back in here for an hour and kick some major ass and put this guy back in a number 2 slot.
So how's your progress overall? Are we going to start hearing you speaking? Are we going to get an Italian version of, how like Valuetainment has the same thing? So
yeah,
we're going to start getting an Italian or Spanish version of the Brand Doctor podcast.
You might, my friends. you might. But it has been a lot of fun. And I got to tell you, this friendly competition has really leveled up my competitive blood. Like, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be in business, if you're going to be successful at what it is that you do, know that there has to be a competitive side to you that burns you up. And I never really considered myself a competitive person. Like when somebody tried to dominate me, like back as like, you know, growing up or like at a game, I would like fold. Now I've completely rewired myself, and this app has been reinforcing this. And I'm just sharing it out loud because I just got the notification Louis Agaldi just took my #1 spot. I'm like, bullshit. So it has just inspired this competitiveness, and I want to carry this over into business too, because again, when you think you can't do something, you can't. Right? People are laughing. I'm seeing these emojis flying up now on my screen. But when you think you can, you can. And it's that simple. So I just want to share that with you guys. And if you loved today's episode, take a screenshot of this episode and tag me in Instagram on my Instagram stories @theBrandDR, and give me what your biggest takeaway was. Give me your biggest takeaway of today's conversation, and I'll make sure that we repost it and show you some love as well. So if you haven't written a review yet, if you haven't dropped some more comments, if you have more questions, you guys know how to do that on YouTube. And if you want some serious one-on-one branding help, I thoroughly encourage you to book a brand assessment with me to help you get those blind spots uncovered and really help you drive your business and brand forward for the remaining of this year and kicking off 2022 with a real aggressive start. So have an amazing day, and I will catch you on the next episode real soon.